The Last Train to Nowhere, A Journey to the Unknown, written and published by the Zillion Pro. Chapter 1, Departure Under a Blood-Red Sky. The air hung heavy with a strange stillness, thick with the metallic tang of despair. I clutched the worn leather satchel, its contents a meager collection of memories and a single, crumpled train ticket, my ticket to nowhere. The Grand Station, once a testament to a bygone era, was now a skeletal shell, its grandeur a faded echo in the peeling paint and cobweb-draped chandeliers. The platform, choked with dust and the debris of forgotten journeys, stretched endlessly into the distance, swallowed by a swirling mist that writhed and pulsed with an unnatural energy. A crimson sun, a bleeding wound in the smog-choked sky, cast an ominous glow over the desolate scene. Its dying light glinted off the rusted tracks that stretched like a forgotten promise towards the swirling mist. This was it, the last train to nowhere. The name wasn't painted anywhere on the iron behemoth, but the hushed whispers among the ragged passengers spoke volumes. A tremor ran through the platform as the earth rumbled beneath my feet. A low, mournful wail echoed through the cavernous station, a sound that sent shivers dancing down my spine. The train, it was here. Emerging from the swirling mist, the locomotive was a behemoth of steel and grime. Its smokestack coughed out plumes of black smoke that stained the already bruised sky. The windows, like vacant eyes, stared blankly back at the platform. This wasn't the sleek, polished express trains I remembered from childhood. This was a relic, a survivor in a world that had lost its way. A conductor materialized on the platform, his weathered face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. His clothes, a mismatched collection of forgotten styles, hung loosely on his gaunt frame. A single, cloudy eye peered out from beneath the brim, its gaze cold and assessing. In his hand, a lantern cast an erratic glow, its flickering flame painting grotesque shadows on the cracked walls of the station. All aboard for nowhere, his voice, a gravelly rasp, echoed through the cavernous space. This is the last stop. A hesitant shuffle filled the platform as the passengers, a motley crew of lost souls, began to board. There was the weary woman, her face etched with a lifetime of sorrow, clutching a worn photograph to her chest. A young boy, no older than 10, bounced on the balls of his feet, his eyes wide with a curious mixture of fear and excitement. A grizzled old man, his face a roadmap of hardship, muttered to himself in a language I couldn't understand. Each face, a story etched in lines and shadows. Each boarded with a silent hope, a desperate yearning for something more, or perhaps a morbid fascination with the unknown. My reasons for being here remained elusive, lost in the chaos that had become my existence. A nagging cough tore from my throat, a stark reminder of the illness that had ravaged my body and stolen my future. Was this a desperate escape, a final gamble on a life teetering on the edge? Or was it a morbid curiosity, a yearning to chase a legend into the mists of oblivion? As I boarded the train, a metallic clang echoed behind me, the heavy iron door sealing shut with a finality that sent a jolt of fear through me. With a final, mournful wail of its whistle, the train lurched forward, the screech of metal on metal a painful echo in the desolate station. I gripped the worn leather seat, the rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels a counterpoint to the pounding in my chest. We were moving. There was no turning back. The last train to nowhere had begun its journey, and I, a reluctant passenger, was hurtling towards a future shrouded in uncertainty. Chapter 2, A Tapestry of Broken Dreams. The iron serpent weaved its way through the dying landscape, a solitary scar upon the cracked and barren earth. The vibrant greens and blues of my childhood memories had been replaced by a monotonous palette of gray and brown. Skeletal trees, like twisted fingers reaching for a merciless sky, cast long, skeletal shadows across the desolate plains. The air, thick with dust and the acrid tang of hopelessness, scraped my throat with every ragged breath. Inside the carriage, a dim, flickering oil lamp cast long, grotesque shadows that danced across the worn faces of my fellow passengers. The initial flurry of activity had settled into a tense silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels and the occasional cough that echoed through the cramped space. Across from me sat the weary woman I had noticed earlier. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, were fixed on the worn photograph clutched tightly in her hand. The image, faded and cracked at the edges, depicted a younger version of herself, a radiant smile illuminating her face. Beside her, a young boy, no older than 10, bounced restlessly on the threadbare seat. His eyes, wide and curious, darted around the carriage, soaking in the scene with a mixture of fear and wide-eyed wonder. "Where are we going, mister?" he finally blurted out, his voice a piping treble that shattered the oppressive silence. I hesitated, unsure how to answer. "Nowhere," I finally replied, my voice raspy, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Nowhere? Is that like a city?" A wry smile tugged at the corner of my lips. "Not exactly, son." He leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. "Is it scary there, like the stories Grandpa tells?" Stories of mythical creatures and forgotten lands danced in my head, stories whispered by flickering firelight on long winter nights. But were they just stories, or did a sliver of truth reside within them? "I don't know," I admitted, the truth hanging heavy in the air. Suddenly, a deep, gravelly cough echoed from the corner of the carriage. The grizzled old man, his face etched with the wisdom of 1,000 harsh winters, shifted in his seat, his cloudy eyes fixing on me. "Nowhere," he rasped, his voice rough and dry like sandpaper. "A place between worlds, where the veil is thin and shadows dance." His words sent a shiver down my spine. Was this train more than just a rusty relic? Was it a conduit to a realm beyond our comprehension, a place whispered about in hushed tones and campfire stories? The woman with the photograph finally looked up, her eyes filled with a flicker of life. "Are you saying," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "that we might find them there?" The old man nodded slowly, a flicker of something akin to hope lighting his eyes for a fleeting moment. As the day wore on, a sense of community began to form within the cramped confines of the carriage. Stories were shared, whispered secrets exchanged. The woman, her name revealed to be Sarah, spoke of a husband lost to a long-forgotten war, a yearning for a reunion that seemed increasingly unlikely with each passing day. The boy, whose name was Thomas, recounted tales of fantastical creatures from his grandfather's stories, his voice filled with a child's innocent belief. The old man, simply known as Elias, spoke in riddles and cryptic pronouncements, his words hinting at a deeper knowledge of the world, or perhaps another world entirely. As dusk settled, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, a sense of unease crept in. The rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels seemed to morph into a chilling chant, the flickering oil lamp casting grotesque shadows that writhed and danced on the walls. The whispers of Sarah and Elias grew hushed, filled with a newfound urgency. Was it simply the approaching darkness, or was there something more sinister at play? A scratching sound, faint at first but growing steadily louder, emanated from the adjoining carriage. It sent shivers down my spine, a primal fear taking root in my gut. Curiosity gnawed at me, but a stronger sense of self-preservation kept me rooted to my seat. The train lurched unexpectedly, the wheels screeching in protest as it slowed to a crawl. A low groan echoed through the metal frame, a sound that spoke of exertion and struggle. We were no longer speeding through the desolate plains. We were ascending. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Dead of Night. The rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels had morphed into a laborious groan, the train straining as it crawled uphill. The air grew thin and cold, stealing the breath from my lungs with each shallow gasp. Outside, the last vestiges of twilight faded, replaced by an inky blackness that pressed against the windows like a suffocating shroud. Sleep, a precious commodity these past few weeks, eluded me. The unsettling events of the day replayed in my mind: Sarah's grief-stricken plea, the cryptic pronouncements of Elias, and the unnerving scratching sound from the next carriage. Each bump and groan of the laboring train sent a jolt of nervous energy through me. The flickering oil lamp cast long, grotesque shadows that danced across the weathered faces of my companions. Sarah, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy from silent tears, clutched the photograph to her chest, its worn image a beacon of hope in the oppressive darkness. Thomas, his earlier bravado replaced by a nervous fidgeting, huddled closer to Sarah, his eyes wide and watchful. Elias, his face an unreadable mask in the dim light, remained perfectly still, his cloudy eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance. Unable to bear the suffocating silence any longer, I cleared my throat. "What was that scratching sound?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Sarah flinched, her eyes darting nervously towards the adjoining carriage door. I don't know," she stammered. Elias, his voice a low rasp, spoke without turning his head. Things stir in the dark, on the edges of nowhere. Creatures drawn to the thin veil, the whispers that beckon from the other side. His words sent shivers dancing down my spine. The veil. Elias's cryptic pronouncements about a place between worlds echoed in my head. Was this rickety train hurtling towards some unseen dimension, a realm where shadows danced and forgotten creatures lurked? A sudden, blood-curdling scream pierced the night, shattering the fragile peace. It came from the next carriage, a high-pitched shriek that clawed at my sanity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the symphony of fear rising within me. What was that? Thomas whimpered, his voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. Sarah let out a choked sob, burying her face in her hands. Elias, however, remained impassive, his cloudy eyes gleaming with an unsettling light. The veil weakens, he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. The shadows grow bolder. Fear, cold and clammy, gripped my insides. A primal urge to flee, to escape this metal monstrosity hurtling towards an unknown horror, wrought with a morbid curiosity. What secrets lay hidden beyond that thin veil? Just then, a rhythmic pounding began against the adjoining carriage door. Boom, boom, boom. It was a slow, deliberate beat, devoid of urgency but filled with a chilling menace. Sarah whimpered, her body trembling uncontrollably. Thomas, tears streaming down his face, clung to her for comfort. Even Elias seemed to tense, a flicker of unease crossing his weathered features for the first time. The pounding ceased as abruptly as it began, replaced by an unsettling silence that pressed down on us like a physical weight. We sat there, frozen in terror, waiting for the next unknown horror to unfold. The minutes stretched into an eternity, the only sound our ragged breaths and the laboured groaning of the train as it continued its ascent. Slowly, the tension began to ease, replaced by an exhausted resignation. Perhaps the horror was over, a fleeting nightmare in the dead of night. Exhaustion finally claimed me, dragging me into a fitful sleep filled with unsettling dreams of shadows reaching through a shimmering veil and whispers promising forgotten knowledge at a terrible price. Chapter 4: A Glimpse Beyond the Veil. Dawn arrived slowly, painting the bruised sky with streaks of bruised purple and bruised orange. The train had finally emerged from its arduous climb, and a gasp escaped my lips. The desolate landscape of the previous days had vanished, replaced by a breathtaking vista that defied explanation. Lush valleys carpeted with wildflowers stretched out before us, vibrant waterfalls cascading down mountains shrouded in a shimmering mist. Crystal-clear rivers meandered through the landscape, their waters sparkling like scattered diamonds. But an unsettling undercurrent pervaded this paradise. The air crackled with an unnatural energy, a low hum that vibrated through my bones. The silence was heavy, unnatural, broken only by the gurgling of unseen streams and the melodic chirping of unseen birds. As I peered closer, I saw figures flitting amongst the trees, ethereal beings, translucent and shimmering, their forms shifting and changing like smoke. They were vaguely humanoid, but with elongated limbs and faces obscured by swirling mists. My breath hitched in my throat. Were these the creatures Elias spoke of? Guardians of this hidden realm, or something more sinister? A shiver danced down my spine as a primal fear coiled in the pit of my stomach. A commotion erupted in the next carriage, bringing me back to the train. Sarah, her eyes wide with a mixture of wonder and fear, was staring out the window. Thomas, a goofy grin plastered on his face, bounced excitedly in his seat, pointing at the fantastical creatures flitting amongst the trees. "Look, mister, look at the pretty fairies," he exclaimed. "Fairies?" I muttered, skepticism warring with the evidence before my eyes. Elias, his cloudy eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light, spoke for the first time since the previous night's terror. "Not fairies, child, but echoes of a world that once was. A world that brushes against this one, a whisper on the wind." His words hung heavy in the air, pregnant with meaning. A world that once was? Was this hidden realm a forgotten Eden, a paradise lost to some forgotten cataclysm? The train slowed, groaning to a halt at a clearing bathed in an ethereal glow. A magnificent city, unlike anything I had ever seen, materialized from the mist. Gleaming towers of crystal reached for the heavens, their surfaces reflecting the soft light like a million scattered jewels. Bridges of shimmering light arced over chasms of swirling mist, and cascading waterfalls tumbled down into shimmering pools of liquid gold. This wasn't just a city, it was a work of breathtaking beauty, a testament to a civilization that had mastered light and crystal to create a paradise untouched by the decay and desolation of the world I knew. But as the initial wonder subsided, a sense of unease crept in. This city, for all its beauty, seemed eerily deserted. No bustling crowds, no joyful music, no signs of life. It was a picture-perfect postcard come to life, yet devoid of the warmth and vibrancy that made a city a home. The conductor, his form no longer obscured by the hat, emerged from the first carriage. His eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, scanned the passengers, his expression unreadable. He wore a long, flowing robe of shimmering white, its fabric seeming to catch the very light of the strange sky. "This is nowhere," he intoned, his voice a melodic echo that resonated through the clearing. "But to stay, there is a price." A wave of unease washed over me. What price did he demand? A part of me, a small, desperate part, yearned to stay in this breathtaking place. It seemed a paradise compared to the dying world we had left behind. Yet, a primal fear held me back. The whispers of Elias about a thin veil, of creatures drawn to the darkness, echoed in my head. Was this paradise a prison, and the price our very souls? Chapter 5, The Bargain of Nowhere. The conductor's words hung heavy in the air, a chilling counterpoint to the ethereal beauty of nowhere. A price for staying? My pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. What did he require? A lifetime of servitude? A piece of our essence? The faces of my fellow passengers were etched with a similar mix of yearning and apprehension. Sarah, clutching the photograph to her chest, her eyes shimmered with a desperate hope. Perhaps, in this ethereal realm, she could find a way to reunite with her lost love. Thomas, however, seemed oblivious to the underlying tension, his eyes wide with childish wonder at the shimmering city before him. Elias, the old man, remained an enigma, his face a mask of neutrality, his cloudy eyes holding a depth of knowledge I couldn't fathom. What kind of price? I finally managed to croak, my voice a mere whisper against the backdrop of the humming energy that thrummed through the air. The conductor tilted his head, his otherworldly gaze sweeping over each of us. "A sacrifice," he intoned, his voice like the tinkling of wind chimes. "A fragment of your past, a memory you are willing to relinquish in exchange for a new beginning in nowhere." Memories. A bittersweet pang struck me. Some were cherished, like warm embers lighting the dark corners of my life. Others lay buried, painful reminders of a past I desperately wished to outrun. Could I truly part with a piece of myself, a fragment of my history, for the chance at a new life in this breathtaking yet unsettling realm? A strangled sob escaped Sarah's lips. Her eyes, red-rimmed and swollen, sought mine. Was she considering offering the memory of her lost husband, the one solace she had left? Thomas, sensing the shift in mood, tugged nervously at Sarah's sleeve. "What's wrong, Sarah?" His innocent question hung in the air, a stark reminder of the consequences of our choices. Would we sacrifice a part of ourselves and potentially condemn an innocent child to a similar fate? Elias, for the first time, seemed to falter. His shoulders slumped, and a flicker of sadness crossed his weathered face. "The price is always too high," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The conductor's smile, though seemingly benevolent, did not reach his eyes. He gestured towards the shimmering city. "Nowhere offers a chance to rewrite your story, to escape the burdens of your past. But the choice is yours." Silence descended upon the clearing, broken only by the soft hum of the energy pulsing around us. Each of us grappled with the weight of his words. Was this paradise or a gilded cage? Could we truly shed a part of ourselves and remain whole? The answer, I realized with a chilling certainty, lay not with the conductor, but with the depths of our own desperation. Chapter 6, Echoes of What We Were. The weight of the conductor's offer hung heavy in the air. Each of us stood at a crossroads, the shimmering city of nowhere a tantalizing but unsettling prospect. The sacrifice a memory, a fragment of ourselves seemed a hefty price, yet the promise of a new beginning in this breathtaking realm held an undeniable allure. Sarah, her face etched with a grief that had aged her beyond her years, was the first to break the silence. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she clutched the worn photograph, the sole memento of her lost love. A flicker of determination hardened her gaze. With a trembling hand, she lifted the photograph to her lips, whispering a silent goodbye. Then, with a choked sob, she tore it in half, letting the pieces flutter down to the ground like dying butterflies. A wave of sadness washed over me. Her sacrifice, a desperate gamble for a chance to reunite with her lost husband, felt both heartbreaking and strangely hopeful. Perhaps, in this realm where rules seemed to bend and reality shimmered, her wish wouldn't be in vain. Next came Thomas. The conductor's words seemed to have bypassed his youthful innocence. He tugged playfully at Sarah's sleeve, his eyes wide with childish wonder. "Mister," he piped up, "can I give away a bad memory instead? Like the time I spilled grape juice all over Grandpa's favorite rug?" A flicker of amusement crossed the conductor's face. "A child's memory holds little weight in this bargain," he intoned, his voice surprisingly gentle. Elias, who had been an enigma throughout our journey, remained silent. His gaze, usually cloudy and distant, now held a sharp focus. He seemed to be searching for something, his eyes scanning the shimmering city as if looking for a specific landmark. Finally, with a deep sigh, he stepped forward. He reached into his tattered coat pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden figurine, a weathered knight with a chipped sword. As he held it aloft, a flicker of pain crossed his weathered face. "Memories shape us," he rasped, his voice rough and dry like sandpaper, "but sometimes they can become burdens we carry for far too long. This," he said, holding up the figurine, "represents a past filled with violence and regret, a life I can finally let go of." With a trembling hand, he tossed the figurine towards the shimmering city. It vanished in a burst of golden light, leaving behind only an echoing silence. My turn. My past, a tangled tapestry woven with both joy and sorrow, weighed heavily on me. There were memories I cherished, fragments of a life I once held dear. But there were also dark threads, reminders of failures and regrets that haunted my waking dreams. Could I truly tear away a piece of myself, relinquish a fragment of my history, for the chance at a new beginning? My gaze drifted towards the glittering city, a beacon of possibility in a world shrouded in uncertainty. A decision had to be made. Chapter 7, Echoes of a Forgotten Dream. The weight of the conductor's words pressed down on me, as tangible as the cool mountain air. Sarah, consumed by grief, had sacrificed a memory of her lost love, a desperate gamble for a reunion in this ethereal realm. Thomas, his childish innocence a shield against the gravity of the situation, remained blissfully unaware of the sacrifice being asked. Elias, the man of cryptic pronouncements, had shed a burden of a violent past. Now, all eyes turned to me. My own past was a tangled mess, a tapestry woven with vibrant threads of joy and success alongside the dull, heavy threads of regret and failure. Could I truly sever a piece of myself, relinquish a cherished memory in exchange for an unknown future in this breathtaking yet unsettling realm? The shimmering city beckoned, a beacon of possibility in a world teetering on the brink. But was it an escape or a trap? What did nowhere truly offer? A new beginning or a gilded cage? My gaze drifted towards the worn leather satchel at my feet, the one I clutched throughout the journey. Inside, nestled amongst the meager collection of necessities, lay a single, tattered book, her childhood diary. It held the faded ink of my younger self, dreams scribbled with hopeful naivety. A doctor, I dreamt of becoming, a healer who could mend broken bodies and soothe shattered souls. But that dream, like so many others, had been shattered by illness, a cruel twist of fate that left me a shell of my former self. A decision flickered to life within me. It wouldn't be a happy memory, the one I surrendered. It wouldn't be a cherished moment of love or laughter. Instead, I would sever the root of my despair, the memory of giving up on that childhood dream. With trembling fingers, I unclasped the satchel and retrieved the diary. Its worn leather cover sent a jolt of nostalgia through me. Opening it, a wave of youthful optimism, long forgotten, washed over me. Flicking through the pages, I landed on the final entry, a scrawled note that spoke of giving up on medical school, succumbing to the pressure and fear of failure. Taking a deep breath, I tore out that page, the paper ripping with a harsh sound that echoed in the stillness. A pang of regret stabbed at my heart, but it was quickly overshadowed by a newfound resolve. This wasn't just about a sacrifice. It was about reclaiming a part of myself, a buried ambition that could perhaps bloom anew in this strange land. As I stepped forward, the conductor's gaze seemed to hold a flicker of something akin to approval. With a steady hand, I held out the torn page, a tattered symbol of a relinquished dream. It shimmered for a moment, then dissolved into a shower of golden sparks that drifted towards the shimmering city. A wave of relief washed over me, a lightness I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't a complete erasure of the past, but rather a shedding of a heavy burden. Perhaps, in this new beginning, I could revisit that childhood dream, not as a doctor, but as a healer in a way I never imagined. Suddenly, a commotion erupted from the direction of the train. Elias, his face contorted in pain, clutched his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The conductor's eyes narrowed. He strode towards Elias, his expression unreadable. "The veil is thin here," he hissed, his voice devoid of its earlier melodic quality. "You cannot cheat the bargain." Confusion washed over me. What bargain? Had Elias not sacrificed his violent past? Before I could react, the conductor reached out, a tendril of shimmering energy wrapping itself around Elias's arm. Elias screamed, a sound that ripped through the clearing. A blinding flash of light engulfed the clearing. When the light subsided, Elias was gone. In his place, a swirling vortex of energy pulsed, threatening to pull the rest of us in. Panic surged through me. What had happened? Was this the price Elias paid for trying to cheat the bargain? Sarah, her eyes wide with terror, grabbed hold of Thomas's hand. They huddled together, fear radiating from them. My own heart hammered against my ribs. Was this the fate that awaited us all? Or was there another way, another choice to be made? Chapter 8, Whispers Through the Veil. The clearing echoed with the fading scream of Elias, replaced by an unsettling silence punctuated only by the hum of the energy pulsing from the swirling vortex. Panic threatened to consume me, the air thick with a suffocating dread. Sarah clung to Thomas, her eyes wide with terror, a mirror of the fear clawing at my insides. The conductor, his form no longer radiating an ethereal glow, stood impassively beside the vortex, his gaze fixed on the churning energy. A cold sweat slicked my skin. Elias's fate was a stark warning. A failed attempt to cheat the bargain resulted in oblivion. "The veil is fragile," the conductor finally spoke, his voice devoid of its earlier melodic quality, now laced with a chilling authority. "It cannot withstand those who seek to exploit its power." His words hung heavy in the air, a veiled threat aimed not just at the empty space where Elias once stood but at all of us. A new resolve bloomed within me. This wasn't about a new beginning, not entirely. It was about survival. We couldn't stay here, not with the veil threatening to consume us and the conductor's true intentions shrouded in mystery. "There must be another way," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in my hands. "A way to leave without sacrificing a piece of ourselves." The conductor turned his gaze towards me, his single eye gleaming with an unsettling intensity. "There is always a price," he countered, but this time, his words lacked conviction. A flicker of something akin to doubt crossed his features, a chink in his otherwise stoic facade. Hope, a fragile ember, flickered to life within me. Perhaps there was a loophole, a way to appease the bargain without complete surrender. My gaze darted towards the train, the iron behemoth that had brought us to this strange and unsettling realm. It seemed oddly inert now, a silent sentinel amidst the chaos. "The train," I blurted out, the words tumbling from my lips. "Perhaps the sacrifice is the journey itself. We leave behind the memories we made on this train, the experiences that brought us here." A tense silence followed. The conductor's gaze remained fixed on me, his expression unreadable. Then, a slow, almost imperceptible nod. "An interesting proposition," he conceded, his voice a low rumble. "A sacrifice of experience, not memory." Relief washed over me, a wave that threatened to buckle my knees. "But can such a flimsy offering appease the veil?" he continued, his voice laced with a hint of amusement. "The veil is a hungry entity, and its hunger grows with each transgression." My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The conductor was right. This was a gamble, a desperate plea to a force I barely understood. Before I could voice my doubts, a blinding flash of light erupted from the vortex. The energy solidified, revealing a figure unlike anything I had ever seen. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered like moonlight and eyes that glowed like embers, it emanated an aura of raw power. "Who dares disturb the veil?" boomed a voice that resonated through my very bones. It was a voice devoid of emotion, yet it held the weight of ages. The conductor bowed his head low, his earlier bravado replaced by a deep reverence. "Forgive the trespass, keeper," he rasped. "These travelers seek passage, but they are unwilling to offer the traditional sacrifice." The keeper's gaze swept over us, lingering on each of us for a moment before settling on me. I held my breath, feeling exposed under its scrutiny. "They propose a novel offering," the conductor continued, hesitantly. The keeper tilted its head, a gesture that seemed to crackle with unspoken power. "Speak, traveler," it commanded, its voice echoing in the clearing. My voice, when I finally found it, was a mere rasp. "We offer the memories of this journey," I said, my gaze fixed on the swirling vortex. "The experiences, the fear, the hope, all of it, left behind as we depart." Silence descended once more, broken only by the low hum of the energy. The keeper remained still, its form seemingly frozen in time. An eternity stretched before me, each passing moment an agonizing test of my resolve. Then, with a sigh that seemed to shake the very foundations of the clearing, the keeper spoke. "A curious bargain," it rumbled. "A sacrifice not of the past, but of the present. Very well. The veil shall remain undisturbed. They may leave." Relief flooded my system, so intense it left me weak-kneed. We were leaving. Chapter 9, echoes fade. Relief washed over me in a tidal wave, so intense it left me gasping for breath. We were leaving. We were alive. The shimmering vortex pulsed, a gateway back to wherever we came from. Nowhere, it seemed, was no longer an option. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of relief and grief, clutched Thomas close. Even the boy, his usual bounce subdued, clung to her with a newfound intensity. The conductor, his earlier arrogance replaced by a weary deference, gestured towards the train. "Your memories of this journey," he rasped, his voice low, "will remain here, echoes woven into the fabric of nowhere. But you will return to your world, untouched." A strange pang of loss pricked at me. These days, fraught with fear and uncertainty, had somehow forged a bond between us, a camaraderie forged in the face of the unknown. Would we return as strangers, the shared experience a fading dream upon waking? Heeding the conductor's words, I turned towards the train. It no longer seemed an old, rickety relic, but a lifeline, a vessel that would carry us back to the familiar, even if it was a broken world. The journey back was a blur. Fatigue, both physical and emotional, settled over me like a heavy cloak. Sleep, a precious commodity these past few days, finally claimed me. When I woke, the rhythmic clickety-clack of the wheels had been replaced by an unsettling silence. I peered out the window. Gone were the vibrant landscapes and shimmering city of nowhere. We were back in the desolate plains, the familiar yet oppressive landscape stretching out under a bruised sky. Relief walked with a strange sense of emptiness. The train lurched to a halt, the wheels screeching in protest. The conductor appeared at the carriage door, his gaze sweeping over us. "This is where our journey ends," he announced, his voice devoid of emotion. We disembarked, blinking in the harsh sunlight. It was a world unchanged, yet somehow different to the eyes that had glimpsed a realm beyond the veil. It felt smaller, somehow, the possibilities narrowed. Sarah, clutching Thomas's hand, walked away without a backward glance. Their figures receded into the distance, swallowed by the endless plains. I turned to the conductor, a question forming on my lips. "What now?" I managed, my voice hoarse. He shrugged, a gesture strangely human for such an otherworldly being. "You rebuild," he said simply. "You carry the echoes of what you have seen, the lessons learned, the memories not sacrificed, but transformed." With a final curt nod, he turned and vanished in a shimmer of light. The train, once a groaning behemoth, dissolved into nothingness, leaving only the faint scent of ozone in its wake. I stood alone on the desolate platform, the echo of the train's whistle a fading memory. The journey to nowhere had changed me. I had seen beauty and horror, hope and despair, and perhaps, somewhere deep within, a seed of change had been sown. A seed watered by the echoes of a world beyond the veil, a world that whispered of possibilities yet to be explored. The world was still broken, but now I saw it with different eyes. Weathered, yes, but not devoid of hope. The path ahead remained uncertain, but I was no longer a passenger on a one-way journey to oblivion. I was a traveler, forever marked by the echoes of nowhere, ready to face whatever the world had in store. Chapter 10, Whispers in the Wind. Days turned into weeks, the memory of nowhere a persistent whisper at the edges of my mind. The desolate landscape stretched out before me, a stark reminder of the world I had returned to. Yet, something had shifted within me. The despair that had clouded my vision had lifted, replaced by a newfound determination. The echoes of nowhere lingered, not as a yearning for a lost paradise, but as a reminder of the hidden strength within myself and the resilience of the human spirit. Sarah's desperate gamble, Elias's sacrifice, and the chilling power of the keeper, all of it played out in my mind, a constant reminder of the choices we make and the consequences we face. The news, when I finally found a functioning terminal, was a harsh slap of reality. The world outside continued its descent into chaos. Resource scarcity, political unrest, and environmental disasters dominated the headlines. It was a world on the brink, a chilling echo of the desolate plains that surrounded me. But amidst the despair, a flicker of hope emerged. Stories, fragmented and incomplete, began to surface online. Accounts of strange lights in the sky, whispers of a city shimmering in the distance, and fleeting glimpses of figures unlike any seen before. These were dismissed as fevered dreams, hallucinations brought on by the worsening conditions. Yet, I knew better. The veil, the conductor had said, remained undisturbed. Nowhere, it seemed, wasn't a physical location, but a hidden realm accessible to those desperate enough to seek it. And perhaps, those who returned, like myself, weren't entirely empty-handed. The echoes I carried weren't just memories. They were whispers of knowledge, fragments of a power I didn't fully understand. The keeper's words echoed the sacrifice not of the past, but of the present. Was this the key? Had we offered not just the memories of the journey, but a part of our potential, a sliver of a future we wouldn't have in this dying world? A plan, audacious and filled with uncertainty, began to form in my mind. I wouldn't rebuild the old world, not in its broken form. I would use the echoes of nowhere, the knowledge gleaned from that hidden realm, to build something new. It wouldn't be easy. Doubt gnawed at me, a constant companion. But the whispers persisted, urging me forward. The world was teetering, and perhaps, the lessons learned on the last train to nowhere held the key to a different future, one where humanity wouldn't just survive, but thrive. With a newfound resolve, I packed my meager belongings, the weight significantly lighter than before. The desolate plains no longer seemed like a dead end, but a starting point. I was a traveler, forever marked by the echoes of nowhere, and this time, I was ready to chart my own course. The wind whipped at my face, carrying with it the scent of dust and the faintest whisper of something more. It was a whisper of possibility, a whisper of hope, a whisper that said, "The journey has just begun."